And welcome to the Guardian Ashes Weekly, supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia. So that's it then, a series of under preparation of two-day tests of the worst Australian team for years, of England's all-out pace attack slowly disappearing one by one. A series of Travis Head, a series of bowling short and wide to Travis Head, a series of Snicko, of Australia taking ridiculous catches, of England dropping them, a series of Bazball without brains, of Jamie Smith getting an unplayable one from Marnus, a series of if they just batted properly in that second innings at Perth, a series of Noosa, a series of Mitchell Stark, of Alex Carey standing up, a last one for Uzi, a series of Pat Cummins just popping up once to remind us how good he is, a series of ignoring county cricket, a series with an England win, a series of Joe Root getting an Aussie ton, of Ben Stokes doing everything all the time and slowly falling apart, and finally, maybe a series of hope. Not too much pressure, but how many Guardian Ashes weeklies in the future will be about Jacob Bethell single-handedly winning it all for England? Probably none, but it's nice to dream. I'm Max Rushden, and this is the Guardian Ashes Weekly. On the panel today, the Guardian cricket correspondent, Ali Martin. Hey, Ali.
Hello, Max. Hello, everyone.
Our chief sports writer, Barney Ronay.
Hello, everyone.
And the Guardian's Emma John. Hey, Emma.
Hi.
And Guardian Australia's Geoff Lemon. All right, Geoff?
Hi, Max.
So Australia win the fifth test by 5 wickets. On the fifth day, they win the series 4-1. Again, from England's perspective, it was a test that gave and took away. I mean, there is lots of time for the inquest, which will sound like a lot of the other episodes, Ali. Should we start with Jacob Bethell, just for a moment of happiness? Such a brilliant, proper test cricket innings.
It was a sensational innings. It felt like and I was there kind of innings, and you don't get too many of those along the way. And with all due respect to some past centurions that I've seen in Australia, this one did feel different. It felt like something for the future. It felt like a sort of prophecy realised with all the talk from Sobers and Lara while he was growing up in Barbados and before he moved over to England. He is the one. He is a fantastic player. It's all shapes and angles. He looks so comfortable on the back foot. It's that high elbow. And it was just a pure innings. And it is one of the very few where, everyone in the press box, we're sitting there watching him construct this thing of beauty, and everyone is purring. I mean, you're listening to gnarled old former Aussies who don't give these things out easily, just sort of, absolutely praising. And I know that Barney even had a former fast bowler next to him in the urinal saying lovely things as well about Jacob Bethell, I should say.
Of course,
but it was, so it was a lovely innings, and a little bit too late from England's point of view, because I probably put myself in the camp of people who thinks that England really should have invested in him 12 months ago. New Zealand was the sign that he had these gifts, and the English summer was the time to invest in him. England slightly blinked on that front. Better late than never in some respects. And it does mean that, unlike Joe Root, he will never go back to Australia being told how many test matches he's played there without 100. Sensational.
And Barney, I thought you were going to say Barney had a tear in his eye. I was like, well, that is a step too far, of course. But he does bat, Barney, with the sort of Gower-esque elegance, doesn't he?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
He doesn't. He's left-handed, but he doesn't remind me of Gower particularly.
Fine,
Gower
I'll take it back.
Gower didn't really move his feet. He was kind of like willowy wrists and stuff like that. The thing about Bethell is his defensive technique is really orthodox and really good. And you can really see when he bats and you can see when he fields as well, what a very good athlete he is, because he moves so late. He has no trigger, and his feet are incredibly quick. His wrists are incredibly quick, and he gets into those positions really quick. And we're all noting even the way he evades a bouncer is old school. Like he wrenches his kind of waist back.
Like Gower?
Well, like Robin Smith. I was thinking Robin Smith style. It's an aggressive leave, but it's keeping your eyes on the ball, which I like. And it's kind of, it's the way people used to leave the ball before they had helmets, I think, more. There was less ducking because you wanted to keep your eyes on it. And it's very exciting. It's like an alpha statement of athleticism. It's like, this is what I do to your bouncer. And Ali's right. I had a lovely moment at the urinal with a former Australian great. But everybody just gets him immediately. At this point, you meant to say it's going to be tall poppies and we put so much pressure on these people. I actually just think he's really good and he knows it, and he's never hidden his own confidence, and succession planning is good. He's already had the white ball captaincy, and who knows, he might save us from the Harry Brook reign. You never know, it's still possible.
Geoff? Does he bring fear to, and you don't really mind? I guess you just want to see good cricket, but are you nervous about how many he'll win for us?
I was delighted to see him play properly, and there is a lot of talk of that, and I'm sure there'll be some retconning of how different things might have been if he'd been there from the start. But I also don't think he would have been allowed to play that innings if he'd played the first test, because the way that England fundamentally approached the series was different during the first test. There was that sort of everybody all in, charge, don't worry about the consequences kind of approach that brought everything unstuck at Perth and Brisbane. So I think the timing worked out for him to be able to play the way that he did, come in during Melbourne when it was absolute chaos and nobody really noticed. And he was getting quite a bit of praise for having made 10 in Melbourne because it was a good looking 10, he looked solid for a minute when others didn't. But this was the opportunity to play that knock, which wouldn't have been there in much different conditions, with the ball rising at him much more sharply in Perth. Maybe he would have played a better one in Perth. Maybe he would have done a teenage Sachin innings in Perth. I don't know. But I think that it worked out for him. It didn't work out for England in terms of him being able to have an impact on the series. And I think that it's probably right that they should have moved on Pope a long time ago, but that's not the way they ended up doing it.
And still, Emma, this test match had all the England moments of frustration. There's Bethell, and then Will Jacks comes in after that stand before and second ball. You're like, Will, that's not you. That's what Jamie Smith is meant to do. Jamie Smith has already done that in the first innings to Marnus, And you also had what you had in so many times in this series is just England getting the new ball and just unable to build any pressure whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, this really, in terms of the bowling, this was kind of it really felt like the end of a series, didn't it? And it was kind of the worst. I mean, luckily, by this point, it really doesn't make any difference because people are only playing for pride, but it really was kind of, the worst bowling to watch. Like, I feel like it's unfair it's really unfair to like pick out Matthew Potts and to like go, oh, well, this was kind of the worst bowling of the series, because obviously he's coming in to a team that hasn't allowed him to play beforehand, but it just felt. I felt like this was kind of, apart from the Bethell innings, for as an England fan, apart from the Bethell innings, this was a real kind of be careful what you wish for test match for me, because after all of the 2-day games and the short ones, there were moments when this test match just felt like it was going to go on forever, even though to me an England defeat seemed inevitable from the moment that they were 57 for 3 in the first innings. And yes, I know that Root stepped in to get them to 226 for 3, and that was marvellous as well. And hooray for another Joe Root century in a losing cause. But all the time he was there, Harry Brook was playing pretty unnecessary shots at the other end, which he ended up getting out to an unnecessary one to Scott Boland. So did Jamie Smith. There was this, it was just like, it was everything that it really just proves that even at this stage, when the pressure was off, they cannot change their approach. I've heard people say, oh, they can't change their gears. They don't have another gear. They're a single speed bike, basically.
And Ali, just on the bowling, I just feel like I've seen Bryden Carse bowl short and wide to Travis Head, and then just any one of the commentators on either Fox or Channel 7 or whatever channel I happen to be watching just saying, that's exactly where Travis Head wants it. I've just seen that so many times in the last 2 months.
I know. They fed his cut shot to the point of, that cut shot is probably now on a January diet or sort of Googling Ozempic. It's been fed so much over the last 2 months. How is it 2 months? It feels longer.
I don't know, 6 weeks,
7 weeks, yeah. Something like that. Yeah. Yes, the bowling, yeah. Yes, that has been the story of Bryden Carse's tour, which I think we mentioned it last week. He's had a crazy tour, loads of wickets. He's a Lionheart. He charges in, he just keeps coming, and he does have a knack of taking wickets, but my word, he sprays it. He isn't a new ball bowler. He's been thrust into that role because of injuries, and his, he really is a kind of a change bowler and a shock bowler. He was funny seeing him on the last day kind of snarling and spitting and, getting really worked up by that snicko. And he's someone who doesn't give up. I think the one main positive for England has been Josh Tongue. Not the emergence of Josh Tongue. He's been around a little while, but for a player that possibly didn't have as much self-belief as others going into this series. I think that he will leave this tour now fully believing that he's a test match bowler. He asks questions of the best players. He's got the angle, he's got the pace, and he seems to have the hardiness as well, to get through long spells, particularly picking up the slack after Ben Stokes went off. So Tongue was the positive, Cast was a curio, and poor Matt Potts not much to speak of, other than to say two things. One, he got the run out of Marnus at the end, so he did walk away with something to show for it. And two, he was the only England player in the entire series who wasn't dismissed by Mitchell Starc. So he should really be looking around the dressing room going, boys, any danger?
He's also about the only player who didn't end up with a batting average in the 20s for the series because he was not out and managed to hit a few and looked okay. I mean, I don't think you can be too hard on Potts because that can happen. You can have a bad test match. Everybody else across the series, I mean, the Cast inaccuracy thing was such a consistent theme across the series. And you can pile into the bowling attack, but they were also badly captained at times. Stokes gets a lot of praise for being innovative as a captain, but he missed a lot of tricks during this series, and things like going to a bouncer field with a ball that's 14, 15 overs old, that kind of thing. We were vaguely satirical for years about it being Broad Anderson Wokes showing up again and again, but at least those players knew what they were supposed to do with the ball, even if it wasn't working, whereas that lack of experience really seemed to tell. Archer got it right by Adelaide, but most of the other players were just so inaccurate that they weren't able to put pressure on. And like you say, the amount of short bowling was just wasted short bowling. It wasn't full bouncer ploy. It was just hanging back of a length, and that was something that just happened so consistently that Australia got away with it.
And Barney, I mean, I suppose from a bowling perspective, it does seem like if all you have to do is pitch it up, and that's not all you have to do, but it seems so obvious, right? And maybe it is much harder technically to do that. And we are, this may not be Australia's primary attack, but you have bowlers who are just metronomic like that. And we just didn't have that.
I mean, the bowling short thing is, the two things are related. It's because there's a massive margin for error when you just bang it into the pitch and you've gone 4 overs, none for 27 trying to bowl in the correct area. It's a defensive ploy because captaincy is kind of an illusion, isn't it? Captaincy means you've got good bowlers. I mean, for ages you could just say, well, he's a brilliant captain. He brought on Glenn McGrath. Like, he could have known that would work, or Shane Warne. I mean, I'm not like a big Stokes guy. I mean, I'm not one of those people who believe everything he does is correct, but his captaincy seems to go up and down in his ratings depending on how good or bad the bowlers are at his command, sort of like everyone. But I just think so much comes into the fact that bowlers weren't fit, didn't prepare, and bowling is incredibly difficult mechanical action. Bowling a ball from a height of whatever you are, 6'7", that's going to hit the stumps and is going to be 84, 85 miles an hour. People underestimate how difficult cricket is. Cricket is really difficult. What Scott Boland is doing is kind of a miracle. Like, it's his level of control, bowling in that can't drive, can't play back slot. It's so aggressive, it's so hostile, it's so relentless. It's really hard to do. And Potts, when he came in, hadn't played since September in a proper game. How is he supposed to do that with the adrenaline pumping? It's just impossible. You've given him, it's essentially an impossible task. That should be asterisked from his record. And he did really well to just keep coming in, because it could have been a kind of mental collapse when he's heading for he was challenging Mike Atherton's most expensive bowling performance ever for an Englishman at one point. And the fact he pulled it back, I think I have newfound respect for Potts. And when I was standing next to him at the urinal the other day, he said the same thing to me. So I'm trying to bring that in. It happens a lot.
I found that I spent a lot of the test match just feeling sorry for a lot of people. I don't know whether that's kind of a common thing of, like, when a series isn't live at the last test, and we all know how tired we are just from doing our jobs for the last 6 weeks. They must be really, really exhausted. And I just found myself just welling up with empathy, whether it was for Potts, for Stokes. I feel really sorry for Stokes. I think he is the ultimate kind of, competitor, the ultimate never say die guy. He goes out there, he does it all himself, and people just haven't come with him on this series.
He certainly made that clear, hasn't he, with his You wouldn't guess it, would you? Like, do you think he feels that at all? I mean, there is this performative aspect to the Warrior King, the straw, the kind of incredible swept back, bearded man. Do you ever feel that maybe the kind of show of that is not helpful?
I think that when I think it's completely fair for it to come out. Like, I think if anything, people are saying that he hasn't
grimaced enough, if anything. He hasn't, he's almost grimaced too well.
He is just a grimace. That's it. He's just a human grimace.
So he also didn't need to bowl, 25 overs in a row and decide to do that himself and then, surprise, surprise, end up with a muscle strain, because that's what happens every time he does a bowling spell like that. He also averaged 18 for the series, which was worse than any of his specialist batting teammates. So was he really let down? Was he hard done by?
He stayed out there. He stayed out there. There were times when he was sticking out in the middle when nobody else was sticking with him.
He spent 3 years saying there's no point staying out there and not scoring runs, and the whole point of our philosophy is that we're not going to bother doing that anymore. We're not going to be defensive losers like those guys in the past who just stayed out there not scoring. They haven't advanced the position of the team, is what he would say. They haven't moved the game along. And now he's the guy who did that and averaged 18 for the series. So was he actually any good?
Yeah, but he's had an epiphany, Geoff. He's had an epiphany. He told the BBC yesterday that playing sport is about winning. And that is not something that, was the thing that he thought in 2022, was it? It wasn't about winning. And now it is about winning. Right. So he's developed.
As a Cambridge United, Tottenham, England cricket team, I would say sport is definitely not about winning. Ali, but Stokes is still the guy, right? Ali, Stokes is still the man to lead this team.
I mean, it certainly looks like it. It does look like, he's weirdly walks away from an Ashes defeat 4-1 down, probably emboldened to a degree because of everything else that's kind of collapsing around him. There has been a sort of existential philosophical breakdown on this tour. And I don't know how they're going to recover that in the next sort of few months. There is a bit of time before the next test series, but him and McCullum are really going to have to sit down and have some proper conversations about how they're going to run this thing. What actually is the outlook here? Because there's been times over the course of the series that they seem to have gone in different ways. But there is, I guess it's partly a lack of credible alternatives. It's partly because Stokes, the all-rounder, yes, I know that he disappointed with the bat here, but he is still one of England's sort of best 4 seam bowlers. And that will be the case probably for the next couple of years, which is when he's contracted to. And it's hard to see him dropping back down into the ranks as a player. And it's hard, so I think he will remain as captain, and his vice captain is, I'm sure we're going to come onto it, because his vice captain he's got his own issues. But yes, when Harry Brooks stepped up and captained on that 4th morning, one of my favourite comments that I saw was that someone said, he's a reverse Mike Brearley. So I'll let the listeners work that one out. But so yes, I do think Stokes will continue, but there is a lot of soul searching that needs to be done between now and that next test match in June. And with an ECB review going on, of course, the tradition after the Ashes, they have to review everything, mark their own homework. But they do need to sit down and try and work out a path forward and what that looks like.
Yeah, so McCullum said, I'd love to carry on because I feel we've got steps to take, things to improve on. I feel like we've got the makings of a good cricket team. We haven't lived up to that down here, but there are some good years in front of English cricket. Stokes said of McCullum, he's a great man, a very, very good coach. There's more that goes on behind the scenes that he'll ever give away or let out. He's got my full support. You've written a piece, Barney, saying, McCullum has to go.
Yeah, I don't believe that you can solve things by firing people always. Max, Tottenham Hotspur, a club that exists simply to fire managers and is very good at it, but it'll never get you anywhere. But on the other hand, I just think that cricket's problem is often, certainly in the current era, a lack of accountability, an idea that everyone basically gets away with everything. And I think that you have to hold someone to account just to send out the messaging. Also, he made loads of mistakes and admitted them. There are things that are just so slack and so no details. And you're paid a lot of money to manage the idea that you don't want to have homework or learning or do the orthodox things is fine, but do them and then reject them. Don't just totally ignore them because you're you're kind of fumbling around in the dark. They had one idea which was kind of good and made sense, but it's like they're like one of those internet influencers with a morning routine. I think I've said this before: the dunking your face in an ice bath and having an avocado, but what happens after that? What's your actual job? What do you do? How do we? Oh, it's just this. That's it. That's all we do.
In a way, it's an amazing comment to make after getting absolutely towed up, to say, well, I want to stay on in the job because I think there are things we can improve. Like, that's an amazing thing to say as a coach whose team's just been annihilated, is that I think I should stay there because things can get better. Remember Darren Lehman trying to do that for 5 minutes after the sandpaper thing in Cape Town, going, well, sitting down in a informal press conference with a bunch of us in the basement of a hotel in Johannesburg by this point it was, and saying, well, we've got a problem with our culture and I think I'm the one to fix that. And we were like, well, hang on, aren't you the one who's been there for the last few years overseeing the culture that's the problem that's caused this problem? Like, where is it that you think you're the one who's going to fix that? And the detail stuff, like the thing of not having a fielding coach because he said, oh, well, it's too hard to get one because they get paid more on the T20 circuit, and so we didn't bother, and then dropping how many catches which potentially swung the series. It was a realization I had that didn't seem right, and I kind of mentally checked it, and it pans out that as bad as England were batting and bowling, they probably still would have won if they just caught all of the catches. Like, Australia weren't that good. Australia aren't that good. They're not that good a cricket team, particularly in the batting sphere. And England couldn't knock them off because they couldn't hang on to anything. Now, whether they have a fielding coach changes that, I don't know, but they didn't have one. How do you come into this tour that's supposed to be the thing you've been planning for almost 4 years and not have the adequate staff in place, not have the basics done, not have the nets booked at the Wacker, all of that stuff? Now, maybe McCullum can be there if he's got somebody else who's making him do those things, but nobody's currently making them do those things.
I like the idea there was just an under-10s team at the Wacker going, sorry, we've got to book 7 till 8 and you can't have it. So Emma, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I was just thinking like how this is, like, really the whole narrative of the series is sort of a pretty Aristotelian tragedy, right? Because you've had the hamartia, which is like the inherent defect, the inherent kind of error in judgment in your protagonist, which is essentially, Bazball and everything that they've been saying is going to work. And it stems out of hubris, which is a belief in your own superiority, and it leads to your downfall. And you've kind of mocked the gods. You've essentially mocked the gods of cricket. It's like people die at the end of Greek tragedy. It's kind of the end. It's the end of the story. That's why I kind of find it really interesting that there's an idea that, well, we can turn this around. It's like you get to the end of Oedipus Rex, and it's the eyes.
But now
are
it's
out.
franchised. You see, it's franchised. It's Oedipus Rex 2. I. We can make more money out of it.
Faster and furiouser.
Yeah, it just on like having fun. McCullum's kind of, people have got to have fun. I saw someone post somewhere, Ali, and I can't remember. There was Pat Cummins and maybe Travis Head that were offered like $10 million or something to give up Test cricket and just do franchise stuff or something like that. So there is a context for McCullum needing young cricketers or needing young cricketers to enjoy Test cricket. And Test cricket is hard work, right? And we all love Test cricket. We're all middle-aged. But like, there is trying to find that balance for a coach to say, come and do this thing. It's hard, but if the rewards are greater, even if financially they're not necessarily greater. Is there any defense there that you have to try and make this enjoyable and yet you've got to put the work in or you're not going to get anything out of it?
We've just recently had the completion of the impossibly dystopian ILT20 in the UAE. I mean, it is one of the most bleak, soulless, plastic franchise tournaments going. And but guys pick up huge paychecks in that. It's big money, and you're going there. You're in the Emirates. It's extremely low scrutiny cricket. There is no pressure. You can get 4 ducks in a row, and there isn't really anyone out there covering it, piling into you. You haven't got a chorus of former Australian players telling you you're weak and feckless and that, you're an absolute disgrace to your country. It is.
There's no one to stand next to at the urinals. The urinals are empty.
No, it's very good. And I don't want to say easy because it's still cricket. Cricket's a hard sport, as Barney said, but it is the easier, low pressure route, and that part of the outlook for England under McCullum particularly has been to basically accept that, England players are paid well. Don't get me wrong, they are paid well, and actually they get pretty good breaks to go and play in the IPL, and they get now a full window to play in the 100. Harry Brooks just signed a deal with Sunrisers Yorkshire or whatever they're called, 450,000. That's on top of his England earnings. So they're still getting the opportunities to earn, but basically England they're trying to create an environment, or they were trying to, probably best to talk about it in the past sense, an environment where it is an enjoyable lifestyle, where it is not, you've only got one career. You don't want to get to the end of your career and look back at it and think, well, this whole thing has passed me by, and all the experiences around the world, etc., passed me by because I've just been so focused on cricket and so tortured by this sport, which tests you in multiple ways. The problem is on this tour is that the cricket has passed them by. I think there's going to be a lot of players in that squad, because it also does come down to personal responsibility as much as the tone is set by the management. But I think there'll be players in the squad that will be looking in the mirror at the end of this one and thinking, man, did I give the best account of myself? Did I do everything I needed to do to get myself into the position to deliver what I do on the biggest stage? And some will say that, I did everything I could and I wasn't good enough. They'll accept that, but you can only look down at that squad, at some of the averages of the players leading into the series. I'm particularly looking at Brooke and Jamie Smith and guys who have underperformed. And I think it's going to haunt them for a while.
I agree with Ali. I think that we should take that slightly with a pinch of salt. But I think that is the context to all these discussions that we have, every mini drama, the stuff about lawn mowing and witch dunking the groundsman, everything to going to Noosa. Why did they do that? Why didn't they have proper warm-ups? Why did you go to New Zealand and fight a bouncer as preparation for Perth? Which, I don't know, to me doesn't seem ideal. It's basically being played out on a shrinking block of ice. These are the last two polar bears, and everything at the edge is crowding this series in on itself. Why didn't you have proper preparation? Why I was talking to someone in the England, I guess, setup who we're talking about Jacob Bethell, and we're immediately making the point that, he didn't get to play, but we had an IPL deal and we can't really interfere in that. We don't want to. They don't want to displease the golden child. They do have to manage this. They can't lose the talent. It's a shrinking. We just see the series and we think, why aren't they performing like Matthew Hayden and Darren Goff? Well, that was an entirely different world. Graham Gooch could spend 3 months perfecting how not to get LBW to Terry Alderman in the indoor schools and doing nothing else. But it's just not that world anymore. And Test cricket is incredibly difficult. And you can't just walk onto the stage and sing opera out of nowhere. And that's why we've had a sloppy series that has confounded us and made us feel strange and undermined, because we are undermined. And that entire world is a kind of, drowning block of ice, unfortunately.
The vested interests with the Pat Cummins $10 million story is probably more likely something to do with the fact that Cricket Australia want to sell the Big Bash, and so it's in their interest to have stories about how they need a lot more money coming in, and that's the only available avenue for them to get it, and otherwise we'll all be gobbled up by the IPL. But I don't buy the idea that you have to sell Test cricket that hard, because people underestimate the fact that it is compelling. You don't have to be, it's not only middle-aged people who like it. It's not something that kids can't understand. We've had 150 years of children getting interested in long-form cricket because it's been there and it's been presented to them as a viable thing that they're allowed to be interested in. And there are, I've met some of them during this series. I've met their parents. I've been introduced to kids who are into Test cricket and who like that more than the long-form stuff, and who have an investment in it in that way. So that can be done if people are willing to talk it up, if they're willing to stop being so bloody pessimistic about the thing that they like. Oh, I really love this thing and it's awful and it's unsellable and nobody could ever possibly get into it because I'm so special. I'm such a special creature that I like Test cricket, and I'm so weird and out there that nobody else could possibly enjoy this thing that 95,000 people just rocked up to watch 2 days in a row and would have come for a third and probably a fourth. There's a real sort of self-indulgence about that kind of idea that the only people who like it are unique, special snowflakes or dinosaurs, or whatever your analogy wants to be. Snowflake dinosaurs, I don't know. There is a possibility to sell Test cricket on the basis that it's different it's unusual, it's unique in its own way. And players still know that you get more out of it. You get remembered and cared about for what you do in test matches in a way that you cannot possibly do when the Pal fucking Dolphins or whatever they're called play Mumbai Super Kings, Desert Cobras in whatever version of the Champions League they put together.
What time's that on, Geoff? I'm actually really looking forward to that. That's going to be amazing.
It's a good point you make. I spoke to Matt Pryor on the radio the other day, and he was basically talking about this exact thing, and still, that memory of sitting on the FCG pitch, having won the Ashes, and that, pint, that righteous pint. And they sat around and they all talked about the sacrifices that they've made, which is it's quite an elite sport thing to do. No real people ever sit around going, I really broke my back to do this podcast or whatever. But no, it was a righteous pint. And when you've earned that, when you've deserved that pint, that's much more than the number of pints that Harry Brook had before not being allowed in a nightclub, right? In New Zealand. So Ali, what do you think the setup will look like? It feels like Rob Key and McCullum are staying at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it before, but it's this T20 World Cup that is kind of sat there, and because it's so close, and that England essentially have the England players going to that tournament, or certainly going on that white ball leg of the winter, they've got 9 days at home, and then they turn around and head to Sri Lanka. So that just means that any change is unlikely to be forthcoming until the end of that tournament. To be honest, I don't know, because what is so interesting and sort of slightly depressing on one level is that this is a real kind of nexus. Cricket is a very small world, and it involves a lot of very close relationships and people who are kind of, pegged to each other. And essentially, McCullum is Key's man. Key is the team director there. He's appointed Andrew Flintoff as the Lions coach. Andrew Flintoff is a client of MC Saatchi, on the board of which is the ECB chair, Richard Thompson. It's a very small world, cricket, and that removing one piece will probably see a lot of pieces fall away. It's hard to see what the kind of end product looks like there. Having said that, if it is to remain with McCullum in charge, there are vacancies, as Geoff mentioned. There are spots in that backroom staff. He has made a virtue of trying to pare back the backroom staff, reduce the number of noises, reduce the number of bodies in the dressing room. And there's some merit to that, I'm sure, on some level. But it's also sort of meant that there's been a lack of technical precision and specialism in the backroom staff. And while that was a good thing for your Wokeses and your Bairstows and your Broads and your Andersons who are coming towards the end of their careers and were absolutely, they know their games. They are hardened professional cricketers. It's the young guys that this setup is letting down, I think, because there seems to be a belief that if you get into the test team, you've made it, you're good enough, you've shown you're good enough, do what you've already done to get there. That's just not the case. There is still masses of room for improvement. Duncan Fletcher knew that. Andy Flower knew that. And so I'd expect, even if there's no sort of overall regime change, I'd expect to see some more specialism coming into the backroom staff and it to slightly expand again.
All right, that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll talk about Australia. Hello, Max Rushden here.
And I'm Geoff Lemon.
The Guardian Ashes Weekly is supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia, and that's not an empty claim. You don't have to wait until you get there. Qantas aims to showcase what's great about the country the moment you step on board. Which brings up a question, Geoff. What do you reckon is the best thing about Australia, putting cricket to one side?
I think that you have to say the food. We've got great producers, fresh ingredients. It's part of the Australian way of life in the modern world, and Australian chefs, Australian producers have had an influence on food around the world.
And you can definitely expect great food from down under on a Qantas flight, featuring menus specially designed for healthier long-haul travelling. What else, Geoff?
I'm going to nominate, controversially, Australian hospitality, which might not always be completely present at the ground if you're an England player. But I think once you get outside the cricket ground, people are, in the main, very welcoming, happy to have visitors and happy to chat to you about where you're from, what you're doing and where you should be going.
And there's lots of that on a Qantas flight to Australia. Nobody knows Australia like Qantas. Book now at Qantas.com. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Ashes Weekly, brought to you by Qantas, the spirit of Australia. Geoff, how impressive was this performance then from the Australians?
You might be asking the wrong person, because I think it was a great bowling performance. I think that pretty much everyone who Australia brought into bowl did a job, even when it was a job they shouldn't have had to do, like Brendan Doggett trying to be the short ball enforcer and not being able to show his full range. I think Mitchell Starc's series was unbelievable, particularly just in the context of how much of his career he's played with the Cummins Hazelwood Lyon quartet, or at least three of them, right? Like those four have played 35 test matches together, which is nuts. Nobody in history has got close to that. The next best is about 22, I think, from that West Indies team of the 60s. So, and then with one of them missing and three of the four still there, I mean, that would be, I haven't crunched the numbers on that, but that's a big chunk more of Test cricket. He's played basically everything since 2017-18, that Ashes series when Cummins came back. It's been those four, or at least three of those four. So to have all of them gone, essentially, aside from Adelaide, and to have to lead the line himself, to come out in Perth and do what he did there was extraordinary. To back it up in Brisbane, you know, he's the reason that they're 2-0 up going into that third test, and then he makes runs when needed in Adelaide as well. Take that out of the picture, and what you've got is what Australia's had for quite a long time now, which is a pretty ropey cricket team that relies on its bowlers to get itself out of trouble. So, yeah, Travis Head makes 629 runs, it would be, for the series, and was a revelation. And Alex Carey was good with the bat. And Steve Smith made 100 in the game at the end and hadn't really got going to that point and missed a game and so on. But they shook their batting order around so much. There's no clarity on like what's Cameron Green's job in that team. He's had 6 different jobs over the last year and been told every time that he's started a new one that this is now what you're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. Usman Khawaja is the opener who didn't open and ended up at 4 and 5 at different times and in and out of the team. Labuschagne and Weatherald were distinctly underwhelming, had really good Shield seasons in the lead up and then left all the runs behind there. So you've got a pretty poor team when it comes to batting consistency. They coughed up their first innings at Perth. They put themselves in a position to lose that game. They put themselves in a position to lose in Melbourne and did lose. But even that first day in Adelaide, the number of soft wickets that fell that would just seem to be a product of technical muddlement and making strange decisions at strange times. They weren't a convincing cricket team. They weren't a 4-1 cricket team. They were a team that got bailed out by a handful of players when they put themselves in losing positions. More often than not, they just got lucky by coming up against a team that was even worse.
On that, I mean, like Travis Head, Emma, had such a brilliant series and is a sort of fascinating, you know, there is a slight throwbackiness to Travis Head in that he's got looks like he's got a tiny paunch. He's probably got a six-pack, hasn't he? But because we talked about Bryden Cast, or it's not just Cast, you know, constantly bowling where he wants it, it's hard to know like how brilliant he is. Like how brilliant is Travis Head?
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because if you'd sort of said at the start of... I was thinking about all the things that if you'd said at the start of the series, for example, yeah, Travis Head's going to be opening from really early on in the series alongside a debutant who's going to average 22, you'd have just been like, okay, yeah, England's probably... England could be winning that series. And the fact that basically Bazball, you know, is now officially in this series, officially remonikered Travball, and people have got the T-shirts to show. There's something? I mean, I think you're right. Is the throwback quality, right? I mean, there is never somebody who has looked to me more like an Australian cricketer than Travis Head. And yeah, maybe that's kind of like just because that's what I picture from 70s, 80s, 90s, and you know, the moustache really works on him, doesn't it? But also just that kind of the zest for the enthusiasm, and I think that's what's really kind of come out of it is that he Bazballs better than anybody in the England team, and it isn't just to do with the bowling, you know, bowling in the wrong places to him. He's very flexible, he's very adaptive, and he's just got the confidence and the shots to pull it all off.
Yeah, and then Alex Carey, Barney, is so. I mean, he's not quite Jack Russell. Let's be real about, you know, just a little whip it behind the stumps. But God, he's a brilliant wicketkeeper and batsman.
Yeah, he's also an amazing human. He just, I sort of said this before, but I couldn't work out at first hearing him talk and sort of being in press conferences and things with him, if that was real. He's got this. Is he being sarcastic? He kind of glows, and he smiles, and he has beautiful eyes. And I wasn't sure if he was. English people aren't like that. Is this irony? What's going on? Why is he just saying nice things? But that he is actually just a beautiful creature. He's like a seal cub. But also he's made into a perfect human. Like, his athleticism is incredible, and his standing up at the stumps is incredible, and it's not showy, it's just brilliant. And he's also an orthodox cricketer, wicketkeeper who, I mean, he's kind of a 7 really rather than a 6, isn't he? But it's sort of beautiful to watch. And wicketkeeping is really, really difficult. You've got to have this picture in your head of the entire space in front of you. You've got to have this kind of sixth sense for the ball. And he's got all that. Although they have worked out his batting a bit. He keeps getting caught at leg slip, which is an odd thing because A, it's a plan, and B, it's one they managed to execute with accurate bowling. So what's going on there?
I know it's not redemptive for anybody in Australia. It's purely, this is purely with an England lens on it. But that kind of the fact that he kind of owned the Ashes from Brisbane to Adelaide, I thought was wonderful, because I'd sort of talked to people from South Australian cricket who all just said the thing that had really upset them about the Bairstow incident was that famously Kerry's the nicest man in the Australian team, and that he's a really good guy. I mean, the glow is real. So I've really enjoyed that for him.
Any comment, Emma, on his treatment by MCC members and what sort of punishment you'd like to see? And do you have the names of anyone involved, as someone who's involved with the MCC yourself?
Believe me, if I had been there on that day, I'd have been taking names. Sadly, it was the one day of the test that I missed.
Geoff, can I ask you about Khawaja, who is retiring, and his contribution to Australian Test cricket?
It's a huge contribution in terms of being someone who's willing to point at elephants in rooms and who's willing to take the blowback that comes with that, to go out the way that he did, to have that long departing press conference, which, contrary to the way it was reported, was not largely about issues of racism. It brought them up. It wasn't like he went in there and talked about that for 50 minutes. He wasn't trying to. Mostly he was talking about how grateful he was to have had the career that he'd had and to have had the second half, the revival that started 4 years ago in the previous Ashes with those twin hundreds. But he's also someone who's not afraid to raise those problems, to point out that obviously that racism's been a factor in how he's been treated at different times in his career. It might not have been the factor every time. It might be hard to gauge how much it is. The people purveying it might not always be conscious of how much it's a factor, but it's obviously got something to do with some of how he's treated some of the time throughout that career. And he would have known, because it's happened often enough before, that if he brought it up, he was going to cop pelters for it from some fairly unsavoury people. And he went ahead and did that anyway, because he's got the courage of his convictions when it comes to speaking his mind. And he was rewarded with the most single-minded standing ovation I think I've seen at the SCG. It was extraordinary. That first innings when he came out, every single person that I could see around the ground stood to him. There is no public animosity. There's a tiny corner of weirdos on the internet who are actually the ones who are angry at him, and it just happens that a bunch of them have columns in various newspapers that rely on selling that kind of stuff. But the general public goodwill and love for him was displayed when he walked out that first time, and walking off in the second innings as well. There was that moment as he paused at the edge of the field. He was there at the ground for hours after play, after everybody had gone. He was down there with his friends and family for a long, long time by the side of the field, really enjoying that last moment. And so he's somebody who has drawn attention to the issues in Australian cricket, that it's still a very, very, very white sport at the top, even though representatively, even though further down the pyramid, the only thing keeping domestic suburban cricket afloat is the influx of South Asian players, but we haven't seen those players come through at the top level as yet. So, yeah, there's still a lot of road to be travelled on that particular path. But yeah, he's more than just the fact that he's played so many Test matches and he's made 16 Test hundreds and he's played a few of the great Test innings. I think his Dubai 100 is one of the great Australian Test innings. He's done that, and he's done the other parts of the job as well that have been things that he had to do because nobody else in that Australian team was coming from the background that left them in the position to be able to do that.
In AOB, Ali, I've just got Snicko written. The controversy of Snicko, is that worth talking about for 1 minute before Emma has to jump on a plane back to the motherland?
Is it worth talking about? I mean, it was totally shown up in this series, wasn't it? And it's just very odd because, obviously based in the UK, following the sport, Snicko is very old tech. Ultra Edge is available. It does the job much better, but I heard people on commentary talking about should we get hotspot back, etc. It's Ultra Edge is there. It works. It's a very good system, and the Snicko with the kind of frame delays and these murmurs and where are the murmurs coming from and which mic has the operator synced up with the images, and it's just it's pretty unsatisfactory. I mean, I don't think it hasn't massively changed the sort of course of the series. I guess Alex Carey's century in Adelaide might not have occurred, and obviously, on the last day there was that issue. I think the problem is that there's still humans involved, right? And almost a precedent was set by the dismissal of Jamie Smith to a very similar one to the one that then got turned down on the last day of the series, and. I think Stokes, spoke about this afterwards. It's just consistency. That's all players want is consistency, really. But it just baffles me that, in such a high profile series, particularly, one of the big three nations, with these big broadcasters who've shelled out a lot of money to cover this series, that they're using the second rate tech just seems weird to me.
You can tell just from the name, right? I mean, Snicko sounds like an affectionate name for a chocolate bar. Ultra Edge sounds like a deadly robot that's coming to take over the world. I just think you can tell Snicko's not taking it as seriously. Like, no, Snicko's fastballing it.
What if it was called Ultra Snicko? Would that be any good?
That's a really good chocolate bar.
Mm. There's the bigger one, isn't it, with the caramel and the wafers?
It's a Tony Gregg era kind of thing. It's the Snickometer. It's a really hokey name for a gimmick that they brought up. That's literally why it's called that, because, I don't know, whenever it was, the early 90s, when Greggy and Bill Laurie were going, we've got a new toy, we've had the weather wall, we've done the keys in the pitch, and now this year our new bit of technology is the Snickometer to measure the snicks. I mean, it's as accurate as like the laughometer that they used to have on one of the clapometer on one of those TV shows. So, let's all applaud for who you think won the debate. The clapometer says it goes to 9. That's just a wooden hand on a wheel. So Snickometer is...
I have one of those next to me just in case I say something good. Just in my own shed, a little clapometer there, just going up and down. I did like, actually, and I don't know if you had this on the UK coverage, the when the bowler runs up and then this sort of, all the lines come up of where his arms and shoulders are, and you see like a twizzle, and then you see the wrists snap and all that. I quite like that as a graphic. That was quite
Where did
fun
we get to
see.
with weight transfer? I still don't know if it's good or bad.
I don't know, but I'm interested. I'm always interested to see where the weight is transferred. That's a very good point.
62% front foot. That's a big number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TNT, I think, and I obviously can't comment, I've not seen any of it, has got a bit of criticism, but it has delivered probably the absolute highlight of, after Jamie Smith was run out, the commentators watching a replay and just thinking that that Ben Stokes had also got run out in absolute identical circumstances. I mean, literally, you just think that is extraordinary. It's the same shot to the same fielder.
It's so embarrassing, Max. And also because these people obviously they're not cricket commentators, whoever the man and the other man. I refuse to know their names. But we're told all along that, they're real pros, and people who know them say these are real proper pros, they're good professional, like, it's not their fault. It's like, watch the game. Watch the game. Don't watch your TV screen. It's, I felt so embarrassed for that guy.
Also, you don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to say yes to things you're not qualified to do. Is there a doctor on this plane? You don't
Hang
have to
on.
go, well,
hey, no.
Are you talking to me, Geoff?
I'm talking to all of us. Yeah. Podcast qualifications. Thin on the ground.
Erase the right to forget on the internet everything anyone here has ever done.
It just reminded me of that Alan Partridge, a goal and another one, where someone celebrating, just kicks the ball back in the net. It's exactly that.
I mean, it is a parable for the series. It is about sort of winging it. You can't wing it. That's one of the big lessons we've
You can't
had,
go to Australia
surely.
and wing it. And if you want to have fun, if you're about having fun playing Test cricket, getting absolutely pumped in Australia is not fun. So avoiding that might be the first priority for having a fun time.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point as well. Like, does it look like fun? I don't see anyone smiling in here.
But we have winged it and we've had fun. So that's a good place to end. And we might be back in 2027. They've made us Ash's weekly microphone covers. So, there's a reason to have us back in 2 years' time. But for the time being, thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks for doing the pod. Thanks, Ali.
Cheers, Max. And thanks, listeners and readers.
Thanks, Emma. Go catch a plane.
I'm going to rush off, but lovely to talk to you all. See you back home.
Thank you, Barney.
Thanks, Max, and thanks, as Ali says, thanks everyone for listening, reading and following us. It's much appreciated.
Cheers, Geoff.
It has been a wild ride from episode 1 all the way through with you, Max, and I feel, this is our Trans-America road trip. We will have this bond forever.
Forever, but we won't speak again for at least 2 years.
It's in the contract.
Yeah, we just time poor. That's the way it works. Ash's Weekly is produced by Nick Harmon. Our executive producer is Daniel Sebo. The theme tune is by Rudy Zagadlo. Thanks for listening.